One of the shortest books in the Christian scriptures packs one of the biggest wallops. Paul's letter to Philemon isn't long enough to have chapters, yet its message has challenged Christians for almost 2,000 years. The apostle was faced with a unique problem when he dictated these few lines and mailed them to his old friend, a problem with which none of us today, hopefully, will ever have to deal. A runaway slave. Onesimus, Philemon's slave, had not only escaped from his master's house after destroying some of his property, he eventually ran to Paul, expecting the apostle to protect him. Does he keep him or return him? The problem becomes even more complicated when Onesimus converts to Christianity and Paul baptizes him. Obviously, our faith has not yet evolved to the point where slavery as such would be unconditionally prohibited. That wouldn't happen for another 1800 years. That's why it's important to note the principles that Paul employs to come to a conclusion. He couldn't just check the latest papal documents or look up some conciliar degrees. He didn't even have a catechism to flip through to find the answer. It's clear that he basically agrees with the wisdom author that our first moral principle is always to do what God intends. But as we hear in today's reading, at times that's hard to do. Scarce do we guess the things on earth, the author reflects, but when things are in heaven, who can search them out? Such certainty can only come from God's Holy Spirit. Without that force in our daily lives, the paths of those on earth could never be made straight. Jesus, in Luke's Gospel, presumes we must be completely committed to that Spirit. Nothing or no one can be more important than that commitment, not even life itself. And it's certainly not something that comes easy. It can take as much planning as building a tower or waging a war. We simply can't be other Christs without it. And there's no other way to daily carry our cross. Perhaps the first principle Paul operates from is Jesus's and modern moral theologians' belief that whatever we do freely. Things done from force or fear don't count toward our eternal salvation. As difficult as it might be to achieve such freedom, the apostle expects both Philemon and Onesimus to have no force or fear in whatever they do. That means he first respectfully asks Philemon to free the slave and permit him to help Paul. But on the other hand, he also expects Onesimus to freely return to his former owner and permit himself to again be in the power before he asks for his release. In each case, Philemon could freely say no, just as Onesimus could freely say, "I'm not going back." Since this letter is in our biblical canon, we presume that both said yes. But there's no way to definitively prove that. It's an essential part of carrying our cross that we create situations in which people are free to do the unpredictable. With such a commitment to freedom, it's only a matter of time before slavery would be condemned by the church. But Paul is also guided by his belief that once baptized, we each become a new creation. So according to his theology, Onesimus is just as free as a person as Philemon, and Philemon is just as much a slave as Onesimus. We're all one. Perhaps one of the reasons we're more comfortable in just following rules and regulations instead of making decisions based on Christian principles is that there's much less personal dying in the rules and regulations. Someone else already made the decision for us.